The late autumn rain pelted the windows of the battered sedan as they sat in the parking lot of Griffin's, a dank bar on the outskirts of the city. Inside the vehicle, ex-cop Jonah Reeves jotted notes on a crumpled napkin. The lamplight hitting his unshaven face gave him a hollow-eyed look. He was trying to piece together the bizarre events that had consumed his life for the past week, but the details kept eluding him. After losing his job in a departmental shakeup 3 years ago, Jonah had made ends meet as a private investigator. The work mostly consisted of cheating spouses, contested inheritances, and drunken blackmail attempts. When the phone rang offering good money for discreet surveillance, he'd taken the job without question. It was a stroke of luck, something he wasn't accustomed to anymore. Or so he'd thought. He put the napkin in his coat pocket and stepped from the car. The rain soaked him within seconds. Griffin's neon sign glowed pink and green, flickering ominously against the wet pavement. Shadows swayed within the bar, silhouettes of the usual crowdmen with nowhere else to go. Day drinkers sleeping off regret. A bartender losing patience with every shout for another round. Jonah's contact was supposed to meet him at the corner booth in the back, away from prying eyes. Inside, the smell of stale beer and old sweat hit him. The bartender gave him a nod that implied half-hearted recognition. Jonah slipped to the back of the room. Rainwater ran off his collar, forming small puddles on the seat. As soon as he was settled, a wiry young man slid into the booth across from him. The kid looked around, nervously, as though expecting men in black suits to jump out from the shadows. "You Jonah?" the man asked. His voice was thin, cracks betraying an anxious state. Jonah met his gaze. "That's me. You didn't give a name on the phone." "Call me Aaron," the man said. He clutched a paper cup of coffee, which Jonah found odd in a bar. "I only have a few minutes. I think they're watching me." "Who's watching you?" Jonah asked, leaning forward. Aaron's eyes widened. "A group, Resurgam. Except they're more than just a group. It's like a cult. They have powers you can't imagine." Jonah had heard stranger claims in his time as a PI, but there was something in Aaron's voice that prickled the back of Jonah's neck. Before he could press further, Aaron shook his head. "I was part of it, but I got out," Aaron said. "They manipulate memories, your memories. They plant alibis, erase guilt, change the story in your mind. People walk free from murders they've committed, or find themselves pinned for crimes they don't remember ever hearing about. It's real, Jonah." Jonah studied Aaron's trembling hands. "If you think I can help, you better tell me everything you know." A flash of hesitation crossed Aaron's face. He glanced at the bar's entrance. "Not here," he muttered. "They might come after me. Meet me tomorrow, 8 o'clock, the old playground on 4th Street. Bring a flashlight. And be careful." With that, Aaron scooted out of the booth and left, coffee cup still in hand. Jonah breathed slowly, half suspecting the kid might be delusional, yet something about his urgency gnawed at Jonah's gut. He stood there for a moment before deciding he had nothing to lose. He would show up to meet the kid. If the tip turned out worthless, at least he'd tried. That night, Jonah drove home to his cramped apartment. The flickering street lamp outside provided just enough light to reveal the peeling wallpaper in the hallway. He tossed his soaked jacket onto a worn-out chair, the napkin with notes fluttering out, half forgotten. His mind was too preoccupied with thoughts of some secretive cult to care about the state of his living space. Sleep came uneasily. Visions of black-robed figures and haunted eyes filled his dreams. He saw himself in a corridor lined with mirrors, each reflection showing a different version of his face. In some mirrors, he was smiling. In others, there was blood on his hands. Waking with a start, he realized dawn was just tinting the sky. He left his apartment well before the meeting time, wanting to scout out the area. Over the years, 4th Street's playground had become a shuttered relic. Once bright swing sets and slides were rusted, the chains squeaking in the wind. Graffiti plastered the nearby walls, and shattered bottles littered the ground. Jonah arrived 20 minutes early, adjusting the small flashlight he carried in his jacket. At precisely 8 o'clock, footsteps shuffled behind him. He spun around to find Aaron, hands buried deep in his hoodie's pockets, shoulders hunched. "You alone?" Aaron asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jonah nodded. "Talk," he said. "What's this resurgam about?" Aaron sucked in a shuddering breath. "They lure people in by offering a chance to rewrite their darkest secrets, absolve themselves of guilt, zapping the memory of wrongdoing. But no one gets that kind of service for free. They use it as blackmail. If you try to leave, they threaten to restore your real memories or mess with your mind until you're a puppet." Jonah felt disbelief battling curiosity. How is that even possible? Memory manipulation? Aaron shook his head. "I don't know the science. Maybe it's some psychonautic technique. Maybe some neurological drug. It's the leaders. They're experts at suggestion, hypnosis, all that. They build entire illusions inside people's minds. Then they'll create the perfect alibi. Why reach out to me? Because there's a cop, well, ex-cop I heard about. You. People say you're stubborn enough to hunt down the truth. You find out the real story, right?" It had been a while since Jonah had lived up to that reputation, but he took it as a challenge. "All right," he said. "Who's behind it all, and where can I find them?" Aaron grimaced. "There's a woman, Dahlia Meeks. She runs a facility posing as a wellness center where the members gather for sessions. It's south of downtown near the old Carmine warehouse. She's got money, connections. Very dangerous." Jonah tried to keep his voice even. "You were part of it, you said. How'd you escape?" Aaron focused on the ground. "I killed someone. At least, that's what they told me later. But after I attended their sessions, I didn't remember doing it at all. They claimed I confessed, but they could fix it for me. Give me an airtight memory that I was at a motel with a friend that night. It worked at first. I felt relieved, like I'd found a get-out-of-jail-free card. But then I realized I couldn't tell what was real anymore. I panicked and ran." Jonah paused, trying to imagine the weight of that predicament. "If you never remembered the murder, maybe you didn't do it?" Aaron's eyes flicked up, haunted. "That's the worst part. They showed me evidence, hacked camera footage, the victim's name, the place it happened. I have holes in my memory from that night. The only thing that kept me sane was leaving the cult. But they're after me now because I know too much." Jonah nodded. "All right, I'll see what I can do." Aaron pulled a single scrap of paper from his hoodie pocket. "Take this," he whispered. "It's the location of their next gathering. They move around sometimes." Jonah studied the address. A decrepit facility near the Carmine warehouse. He stuffed the paper into his wallet. By the time he looked up again, Aaron was already shuffling away, the hood pulled tight around his face. The building near the Carmine warehouse looked abandoned at first glance. Broken windows, twisted rebar, soggy cardboard boxes stacked out front. Jonah parked 2 blocks away under a broken street lamp. He approached quietly, slipping around the back to avoid detection. A side door was reinforced with new metal locks that stood out against the otherwise decaying structure. Through a cracked window he saw fleeting silhouettes. He remembered the hush of clandestine operations from his former career. Leaning in, he tried to make out bits and pieces of conversation. Most of it was muffled, but one voice, clear, authoritative, cut through the haze. A woman's. Jonah strained to see. About a dozen people were seated in mismatched chairs, facing a slight woman in a tailored gray dress. She had dark hair pinned back in a severe bun. Though her face was partially turned away, Jonah guessed it must be Dahlia Meeks. The intensity in her voice suggested complete control over the group. "You've taken the first step toward freedom," she was saying. "Resurgam is here to guide you to your truest self. No guilt, no fear, no shame." The group chanted softly in response. The rhythm of their words made Jonah's skin crawl. He decided to sneak closer, pushing the window open another inch. "Our methods," Dahlia continued, "rely on cooperative healing through advanced therapies. Memories of wrongdoing, accidents, regrettable actions can be removed or replaced. Are you ready to begin your journey?" Jonah slid away from the window, his heart pounding. Whatever mystical or pseudoscientific technique they used, it was certainly enough to attract a following. He considered disturbing them, maybe calling in a tip to the police. But then he remembered Aaron's terror and realized how carefully Resurgam must hide its footprints. He needed more concrete evidence, something that would prove the memory manipulation beyond rumor. He circled around until he found a secondary window leading into what looked like a small makeshift office. Prying it open carefully, he ducked inside. The room was cramped, cluttered with filing cabinets and locked drawers. The light was off, but he could see a laptop on a metal desk. Jonah prayed it wasn't password protected, but that was wishful thinking. Sure enough, the login screen demanded a password. When a murmur of voices drifted from the hallway, he froze. An unseen group passed by, feet shuffling against the concrete. Jonah pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering. They moved on, leaving him in silence. He exhaled and searched for anything that might help him break into the laptop or find physical documents. Rifling through a half-open drawer, he uncovered a small notebook. It was stuffed with course schedules, phone numbers, and a scroll of meeting time. Toward the back, he spotted the word procedures. The subsequent pages were a frantic jumble of lines and sketches describing something akin to a hypnotic ritual combined with neurological conditioning. Password hints were scribbled in the margins. Precursor? Doll? Well, nothing conclusive. Then the doorknob rattled. Jonah's heart leapt. Without thinking, he slid behind a filing cabinet. Door hinges squeaked as light spilled into the small office. "Shouldn't have left it here," said a low male voice. A second voice, female, answered in a whisper. "Just grab the laptop, Miss Meeks is waiting." They approached the desk. Jonah heard the rustle of papers being lifted. "You have the password, right?" "Of course. Miss Meeks gave it to me this morning. She wants me to create new profiles for the new recruits. We're behind schedule." While they fiddled with the laptop, Jonah held his breath. He heard the distinctive chime of a successful login. The female voice murmured a few keystrokes, then closed the screen with a decisive click. "Let's go," the man said. "I don't like leaving the security cameras unwatched for too long when we're hosting a session." They swept out of the office, shutting the door behind them. Jonah waited, counting the seconds until their footsteps faded down the hall. Then he peeked out from behind the cabinet. The laptop was gone, but the drawer was slightly ajar. He emerged, swallowing a curse. At least he'd grabbed the notebook. That might give him leads on the next session, or a clue about the process they used. Slinking back to the window, he raised himself up and crawled through into the alleyway. He half expected to run into a guard, but the coast seemed clear. Quickly, he made his way back to his car. Tendrils of fear and adrenaline still coiled in his stomach. It took the better part of the next day for Jonah to carefully go through the notebook. The entries were scattered, some in code, but he noticed repeated mentions of a place called the Mirror Room. References indicated a deeper level within the facility. People underwent some kind of guided hypnosis there, carefully overseen by D. He guessed that was Dahlia Meeks. He tried to contact Aaron with the phone number he'd been given, but there was no answer. His next step was to dig into Dahlia Meeks's background. If she had a practice license or any known business ventures, it would likely be on public record. Jonah spent hours at the library's computer station, searching databases, encountering roadblocks. He found only traces. Dahlia had a psychology degree from a reputable university, then vanished off the academic radar. Her name popped up in 2 articles praising a groundbreaking approach to trauma therapy, but nothing else. It was like she'd carefully erased her tracks. That alone sharpened Jonah's suspicion. He was about to leave when his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered tentatively. A quivering voice rasped, "Jonah? It's me, Aaron. Where have you been?" Jonah asked, stepping into a quiet corner of the library. "They're on to me," Heron said. "They're messing with my head, but I managed to fight it off. I think I can't do this anymore. They threatened to restore my memory, show me the full murder. I'm afraid what that might do to me." Jonah's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm getting close to something. Don't panic. Where are you? A storm of static crackled over the line before Aaron whispered and addressed some motel near the city's fringes. Then the call cut out. No goodbye, no explanation. Jonas swore under his breath, snatched his keys and drove there immediately. The motel was a neon-lit pit of despair. Paint peeled off the walls and the desk clerk barely looked up from a small television as Jonah flashed his PI license. 4th floor, room 416. Jonah knocked. The room was bathed in the sickly yellow glow of a single lamp. There, huddled in the corner, was Aaron. Eyes red, hair disheveled, he clutched his knees. A single duffel bag lay near his feet. "I can't take it," he said, voice trembling. "Last night I dreamed it all happened again. The blood, the body. Then halfway through it changed, and I saw Dahlia's face telling me it was all just an illusion. My mind is splitting. I can't separate real from false." Jonah knelt next to him. "You need to get out of town," he said softly. "They can't track you if you lay low for a while." Aaron turned anguished eyes upon him. "But you can stop them, right?" Jonah's voice caught in his throat. He wanted to promise, but he'd lost faith in lofty promises long ago. "I'll do what I can." Aaron nodded slowly. "All right. I'll go tonight. But I need money. It costs a lot to van." Jonah sighed. He wasn't exactly flush with cash, but he reached into his wallet and handed a wad of bills to Aaron. The man's gratitude was so profound it almost brought tears to Jonah's eyes. Then, glancing out the window, Jonah caught a flicker of movement in the parking lot. A figure standing underneath a street lamp, watching the building. "We need to move now," Jonas said. He guided Aaron out of the room and down the back stairs, hoping to avoid detection. Once at Jonah's sedan, he drove Aaron across town to a bus station. "Take the next bus to the next state, anywhere you can disappear for a while." Aaron glanced back, face etched with fear. "Thank you." Jonah gave him a grim nod and watched him board a bus leaving in 15 minutes. As soon as it pulled away, Jonah left, heart pounding. It felt like the calm before a thunderstorm. Jonah realized the best way to expose Resurgam was to gather direct evidence of their memory manipulation in progress. He returned to the warehouse facility that night, armed with a better plan. He circled the perimeter until he discovered a basement entrance. Lockpicking was a skill he'd honed in his PI days, and this lock was standard. Within 30 seconds, he slipped inside. A narrow corridor stretched out before him, lit by fluorescent bulbs. The walls dripped with condensation. As he shuffled forward, he heard faint chanting. The sound reverberated in the cold industrial space. Jonah pressed himself against the wall near a steel door. He peered through a sliver of a window at the top. Inside, 5 people stood in a half circle around a man strapped to a metal chair. Eyes rolled back, drool trickling from a slack mouth. Dahlia Meeks was at the center, reciting in a low, intent. Another Resurgam operative held an IV drip and a small tray of syringes. Jonah's stomach churned. "He's making remarkable progress," Dahlia said to the group. "We're isolating the memory of his crime and expunging it. After today, he'll remember being on a cruise vacation at the time of the murder. The perfect alibi." One of the onlookers timidly raised a hand. "But that doesn't fix the fact he took someone's life. Doesn't get rid of actual guilt." Dahlia's dark eyes flashed. "We don't deal in moral absolutes here. This is a service. If you have qualms, you know where the door is." Her tone left no doubt about the consequences of leaving. Jonah bit his lip. He carefully took out his phone and started recording through the gap. Dahlia continued the chant, and the man in the chair let out a low moan, as if experiencing a nightmare. After a moment, Dahlia nodded to the operative with the syringe. They injected the man's arm. His face contorted, then eased into slackness. The group parted as Dahlia stepped forward, leaning toward the man's ear. "You were never there that night," she crooned. "You have witnesses placing you on the ship. Remember the deck, the salty air, the band playing at dinner." An eerie calm washed over the man's features. Jonah felt a jolt in his chest. He was witnessing the cult's essence. He almost couldn't believe it. Suddenly a hand seized the back of his jacket and yanked him away from the window. Before Jonah could react, an elbow jabbed his ribs, doubling him over. The phone slipped from his grasp, skidding across the concrete floor. A tall, muscle-bound man glared down at him. "Jogger in the halls, Miss Meeks," he shouted, twisting Jonah's arm behind his back. The steel door swung open, and Dahlia emerged, eyes blazing. "You've been snooping, Mr. Reeves," she said calmly. "I've heard about you." Jonah swallowed the pain in his side. "So you know I'll expose everything. I've got recordings." Dahlia raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure your phone has many interesting secrets. Too bad you left it behind." She glanced at the big man, who picked the phone up and slid it into his pocket. "I appreciate your investigative nature, truly, but you've made a grave mistake coming here alone." She gestured inside, and more members appeared, forming a silent, intimidating circle. Jonah's mind raced for an escape plan, but the brute's grip on his arm was iron tight. Dahlia walked around him, assessing him like a scientist observing a lab specimen. "Bring him to the mirror room," she said. They dragged Jonah down another corridor until they reached a large metal door. Inside was a chamber with an unsettling arrangement. A reclined chair surrounded by mirrors angled at the occupant from every side. Each reflection gave a distorted vantage point, making Jonah's pulse race. The brute forced Jonah to sit, strapping his arms and legs in place. Hollow, metallic clangs echoed as the door slammed shut behind Dahlia. She circled him, then snapped her fingers. Another aide appeared with a tray of small vials and a loaded syringe. "Don't worry," Dahlia said with a chilling smile. "We're not going to kill you. We'll do something far more interesting. You'll have a new alibi for tonight. Maybe you were out getting drunk or driving across state lines. You can pick. But first we'll remove any recollection of this little infiltration. Then you'll never threaten Resurgam again." Panic surged. Jonah fought the restraints, but they didn't budge. Dahlia nodded at the aide, who readied the syringe. Before the needle could plunge into his arm, the door flew open. A figure stepped inside. Aaron. He was trembling, sweat pouring down his temples. "I'm not running anymore, Dahlia," he said, voice shaking. "I remember too much, some of it real. I know what you're doing." Dahlia's lips curled into a sneer. "Aaron, you're making a grave error coming back here." Aaron held up a gun in a shaky hand, leveling it at the aide. "Let him go." Chaos erupted. The brute lunged for Aaron, who fired a shot, wild, echoing in the room. The bullet glanced off a metal panel, but the sound was enough to make Dahlia step back. Jonah seized the chance, twisting violently in his seat. The aide had turned to face Aaron, loosening Jonah's straps just enough for Jonah to slip a hand free. Jonah grabbed the aide's arm, wrenching the syringe away before it could pierce his skin. With a surge of adrenaline, Jonah yanked the man into a mirror, which shattered on impact. Glass rained down. Dahlia shouted, stepping backward. Aaron, still holding the gun, aimed it at the brute who had tackled him. The big man froze, hands raised. Jonah tore off the remaining straps, ignoring the cuts on his hands from the broken glass. He darted over to Dahlia, grabbing her by the wrist before she could flee. "You're done," Jonah growled. "All of you." But Dahlia laughed, surprisingly. "You think this is over? People want what I provide. Without me, that man's murder memory will eat him alive." She jerked her head toward Aaron. "I give people second chances. By turning them into your puppets," Jonah retorted. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Jonah shoved Dahlia against the wall, pressing his forearm to her shoulder. Aaron hovered nearby, gun shaking wildly. 2 more Resurgam members appeared at the door, but upon seeing the shattered mirrors, the gun, and the chaos inside, they froze. Aaron's eyes locked on Dahlia. "You made me think I killed someone," he said, voice tight with anger and fear. "You twisted my mind. Did I do it or not?" Dahlia just smiled, a horrible, knowing grin. Jonah took a breath. "Aaron, get out of here," he said quietly, never taking his eyes off Dahlia. "Call the police. Tell them everything. Tell them to bring backup, fast." For a moment, Aaron stood there, uncertainty etched into every feature. Then he nodded and, still holding the gun, backed away out the door. Jonah didn't dare move from his position, pinning Dahlia. He recognized the flutter in his stomach, the sense that danger lurked behind every corner in this den of illusions. Dahlia sighed theatrically, as if resigned. They'll come for me, but proving I tampered with memories won't be easy in a court of law. Psychotherapy is often subjective, and all I have to do is produce a different story. Besides, who will the jury believe? Someone who was fired from the force for subordination? Or me? Jonah clenched his teeth. She'd done her homework on him. He felt a spike of rage, but he refused to let it cloud his judgment. "We have your files, your students, your documents," he said, recalling the notebook in his possession and the video he'd nearly recorded before being caught. "Plenty of them will cooperate once they realize they've been deceived." "Perhaps," Dahlia conceded, "but you've no idea how many of them prefer my illusions. Guilt can be a heavier prison than real bars. Once the cops step in, many will defend me to keep their illusions intact. You'll see." Sirens sounded in the distance. Jonah exhaled a shaky breath of relief, hearing them grow closer. He didn't loosen his grip on Dahlia, though her body remained still. Her eyes burned with a cold confidence that chilled him more than any threat. Police stormed the hallway. Jonah let them do their jobs, clearing the building room by room, gathering Resurgam's members. The big man who'd assaulted Jonah was handcuffed, cursing the entire way. Dahlia allowed herself to be taken in with an eerie calm. As an officer read her rights, she gazed over her shoulder at Jonah and gave a slight smile that promised future battles. Jonah slumped against the corridor's wall, exhaustion wrapping around him like a damp shroud. He gave his statement to the police, explaining everything he'd witnessed. When they asked for his phone, he admitted it had been confiscated. But to his relief, an officer told him Aaron had emerged from the building shortly after the shot was fired, phone in hand. He'd apparently retrieved Jonah's device at some point and delivered it safely into police custody. As dawn broke over the battered warehouse district, Jonah walked out through the main doors, stepping into the pale light. The shattered illusions lay behind him, along with the shards of glass, broken chairs, and leftover syringes. The path to justice might be convoluted, given Resurgam's talent for rewriting reality. Still, Dahlia's arrest was a start. Outside, he spotted Aaron leaning against a patrol car, eyes distant. Jonah approached quietly. He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "How are you feeling?" Jonah asked, almost not wanting to know the answer. Aaron shrugged. "Not sure. I'm still not certain what's real, but at least I know they lied. Maybe in time, I'll fill in my memory gaps with the truth. Or maybe I never murdered anyone to begin with. Either way, I'm free from them." Jonah looked up at the dawn sky, remembering for a moment the day he himself lost everything, a day that had shaped him into someone both stubborn and haunted. "Yeah," he said. "It'll be tough, but you'll get through." They parted ways. Aaron had new possibilities, and Jonah had a lingering sense that his job wasn't quite finished. The cult might be scattered, but Dahlia's manipulative methods had surely sunk hooks into countless vulnerable minds. People who would cling to illusions rather than face guilt head-on. Jonah wondered if any of them would testify. For now, he would take the small victory. Walking to his car, he felt the weight of fatigue, but also a cautious satisfaction. He'd done what he was best at, digging up the truth. Even if Resurgam spawned future nightmares, at least Jonah had proven he could still fight in the murky gray area where fact and fiction collided. One day at a time, he'd go on exposing lies, no matter how cunningly they were woven into someone's memories. He started the engine, letting the heated air wipe away the chill from inside the warehouse. Looking in the rearview mirror, he saw his own reflection staring back. Tired, worn, but resolute. It struck him that he'd just witnessed the darkest edges of human vulnerability and manipulation. Though Dahlia's cryptic smile lingered in his mind, the siren's echo told him the law had finally caught up to her, at least for now. With a final glance at the cordoned-off facility, Jonah pulled away. The city still lay ahead, drenched in secrets, illusions, and regret. And despite all that, he felt a flicker of hope. Because in a world where memories could be twisted and alibis fabricated, he had managed to find the truth, trusting that it would set more people free, starting with himself.